So we might as well start because we're live streaming right now. So, hey everybody, if I could get you to do just one thing for me, and then I'll tell you who I am. So no big deal. Just stand up for a second. I just think this would be kind of, I'm a big fan. So get everybody moving and sitting down all morning. So hey, we're gonna turn to that camera because it's live streaming. So everybody just turn and face that camera. Lift your dominant hand, whichever hand it is, left or right. Look to the person next to you and just get some high fives going around. Yeah. These are definitely early morning high fives. Alright, so I guess you can sit back down now, that's cool. We just did something nice for the folks watching from wherever they are. So, hey, World IA Day 2019, Kent, Ohio. Like, this is awesome. The turnout is more than I expected, so this is pretty nice. This is actually my second IA Day ever. How many people at your first? Nice, nice. Okay. Last year I was in Des Moines, Iowa, so I feel like I keep getting to go somewhere cold. Before I came here, I was in North Carolina, but I actually live in Atlanta now. Before that, I was in Minnesota. So what's interesting is to see snow on the ground again, right? Like I thought I was done with that, and right outside my hotel room, there's like snow still. So, all right, well, whatever. You guys are used to cold and winter, so I'm not gonna rub it in that I don't have that anymore. How many, just by a quick show of hands, how many of you are, you know what? Can you still hear me without like this thing? Yes. What? All right, sweet. I'm gonna turn that off. All right, how many people are actually designers, like UX designers, information architects? How many, perfect, how many people are like, don't consider themselves designers, but still a little bit creative? Sweet, I like that. All right, how many of you are ready to take on a little bit more in your career? You're ready for the next step. Like you think it's time to like, I need more responsibility, I wanna like grow as a designer, as a person. Perfect. So, that's why we're here today. I like that he's closing, somebody's closing the door. I can't see it from here. I appreciate that. Sweet. All right, so my name is Andy. I am currently the Group Vice President, User Experience Director, Wholesale Banking at SunTrust Bank. Now that is like a mouthful. It's a banking title, right? And what's weird is we're going through this merger, so I don't know what my title will end up being. There's talk that our headquarters is relocating to Charlotte, so that would be nice. But I've been the lowest person on the org chart, and I've also held the highest design title in a company. And you know, when it comes to being a true like design leader, the truth is, titles don't mean shit. Being a leader isn't a title. It's a role that you're hired for. No, that's leadership. It's actually a choice. We make a choice to be leaders. These skills you can actually learn and develop. Leaders actually emerge. They're the ones that stand out. You know, when you meet with executives or like, that's when titles and politics, they matter. Those types of discussions require a stronger point of view and stronger opinions. And those are meetings that you can aspire to be in. That's when design has the seat at the table. That's when you have an advocate at the highest level. But until you get to that point, like, you can definitely step up and lead. You know, Scott Belsky from Adobe said the future is crafted by those who do work they don't have to do. And I remember the last time that I quoted him, I caught backlash on social media. And it's because it was taken out of context, and I have to be cognitive of the fact that there are opportunities that present themselves that some people might not have the ability to take on. So somebody might not have the way they live in their life, the ability to take on extra work or put in extra hours because they have other commitments. Just so you know, I'm aware of that, but truly, like, to advance, to grow, you've got to start doing the job that the responsibilities of the job that you want to have, not just the job that you currently have. You have to go above and beyond. And sure, those barriers that make things difficult can get in the way, but you should really start to you gotta want to step up. So let's talk about some of the qualities that make up a leader. The first one is empathy. And empathy, I'm sure, will be a recurring theme that you hear throughout the course of the day. It's not about just showing empathy to the people that we design for, but it's about showing empathy to the people that we work with. What is it like for them to work with us, to work with designers, to work with information architects, to work with content strategists, interaction designers, whatever the flavor or the discipline that we're calling ourselves are? It really is time to lose that designer ego. I've talked a lot about designer ego in the past. The truth is, right, if we walk into a conversation and we say, you know what, I'm here, I'm the designer, I'm gonna solve your problems for you, that's not empathetic at all. It really is about how can I help you? How can we solve the problem that would help our customers, the people that use our products? Those are the people that we want to give us money. Those are the people that we need to satisfy. You have to care about people to be a leader. You also need the ability to drive discussions. You have to influence the design conversation to shift from tactical to more strategic. It's not about solving a single problem. It's about figuring out what the right problem is to solve and focusing on that. That's the most important and highest value you can provide as a designer, to make sure that your company is solving the right problems. It's okay to kill projects, because those time and resources can be used for other things. You also have to be able to communicate effectively. That's just not talking to the people that you work with, talking to the person that sits next to you. It's about being able to speak the language of the business. And you have to share your wins and metrics that the business can relate to, because at the end of the day, whether it's marketing, whether it's technology, whether it's your development partners, we all kind of want the same thing. We want to be successful. But they might not understand the metrics that you're telling them, because they're more concerned about profit, or they're more concerned about conversion rate. So you have to clearly define and communicate those expectations and goals as a group. And then, as designers, like, one of the best things that we can do is use design as one of our strongest tools to tell stories. Use it as a storytelling tool. I'm not saying be the cliche, I'm gonna grab this marker and write on this whiteboard and nothing ever happens, but grab the marker, grab the whiteboard, like, lead the conversation, lead the discussion. And as designers, we have to ask the right questions, the hard ones, the ones that everyone might be thinking, but they're not willing to say, or even the ones that nobody else has thought of. Communication is the key, and poor communication is the root of most problems. We also need to collaborate. That's going beyond communication. It's about including others into our design process so that we can show that we care about them and their perspectives. It's not just about designers going off in a silo or in our little design bubble and coming back with a solution. We've got to co-create with the people that actually use our products, and let our partners come in and observe and have access to those customers as well. We also have to collaborate beyond the design team, like I mentioned, and be proactive in maintaining the relationships with them, even when there's not a specific reason to do so. The reason we do this is because so much of our work relies on the relationships that we form. So if you're friends with one of your engineers, say Lisa the engineer, and Lisa's in a conversation with a few stakeholders, Lisa will say, hey, you know what, I remember the conversation I had with the designer, like they should be in this conversation. So just by building that relationship and collaborating, people are becoming aware of what we do, and that's kind of the first path to leadership. We also have to empower others. So at some point, if you're a manager, you have to protect your team from politics. Like, that's key. You have to be a buffer for them and defend them when making tough calls with stakeholders. And then it's about providing them the tools and opportunities in the atmosphere that they need to deliver their best work. And then it's about amplifying the work that they do. And of course, celebrating wins. So I lived in Minnesota for a little while. There's a band, Soul Asylum. Anybody familiar with Soul Asylum? A few, very few. They had a hit called Runaway Train in like early 90s. That was like their biggest hit. They had another song that was the B-side to that said, everybody loves a winner, but when you lose alone. And like, that truly is like our lives, right? If we're the ones, we had a project that fails, you're gonna go eat lunch and everybody's gonna be like, oh, well, there's designers. But if you like had a project that was super successful, everybody loved it, all of a sudden they're gonna be like, hey, I want this person on my project. Hey, like, let's talk, can you come into this meeting? Can we like sit down and celebrate? Celebrate those wins. Go out, have a drink, bring the whole team, invite your partners. It's amazing how contagious that is. Then we've got to be engaged, and by being engaged, it's about actively listening, not just, I kind of hear it. It's really about understanding what the person's trying to say, and then having these coachable moments. So there's a thing called spot coaching that I learned. It's about letting people kind of go off and do what they would normally do. But right at that moment, like if you see something going wrong, most people, they have to learn from their mistakes. So you have to like look for the right moment and then say, hey, well, if you would have done this differently, if you would have talked to this person differently, if you would have expressed your design intent in a way they understood, like you would have gotten better results out of that conversation. But you don't learn unless you make mistakes. And then of course, you have to be available to your team no matter how full your calendar is. And those calendars will fill up. How many of you are like double and triple booked most of the day? A lot, right? It's ridiculous. How do you know which meeting to go to? But beyond that, if you're really being engaging as a leader, you've got to make sure that everyone on your team is comfortable challenging and questioning you. My team, we have the biggest like arguments and blowouts because I don't want to tell them what to do. I want to influence what they do. And a lot of times if I mention that I would like to see something else, they're the first no. Like we've tried this, we've whiteboarded this out, we've sketched it out, it doesn't work that way. And then we just have back and forth because it's healthy conflict, right? So it's about showing more interest and more involvement. And again, engagement is infectious. And then trust. Trust is like the biggest piece of the puzzle. Be open and honest, but also be vulnerable. Ask for feedback. Talk to the people that you work with every day. They're more likely to give you honest and open feedback about how you're doing or what you could do better or what you could improve upon. Find somebody that you work with that you know is honest with you. And just once a month have lunch and say, hey, you see you work with me every day. What can I be doing better? What am I not doing that I should be doing? And then, it's also about admitting when you're wrong. As a leader, you will put your neck out there and sometimes you have to walk it back. You have to say, no, I'm sorry, that didn't work. I'm sorry, my bad. Like, how can we make this better? That's what really creates trusting relationships with your team. And then it's about knowing what motivates people. If, let's just say, I know a few people, so I won't call on them, but I'm gonna pick these two. Let's say like you guys both work for me, and you just had a baby, and you're like, you know what, I don't wanna be on these 10 o'clock calls with our development team overseas. And you're like, you know what, this job, it's a little more than I expected. I'm probably gonna leave. I don't like living here. The first chance I have, I'm gonna get out. I will say that's great. What I will do is work with you, we'll build up your portfolio, and we'll get you on to the next job, and we'll get you ready for that. It's about having that type of trust with your team so that you can help them achieve the goals that they want. And then it's also about having ownership and doing what you say you're gonna do, right? That's key. So accountability, authenticity, and transparency are what build trust and earn trust. And as leaders, you have to have a vision, right? Truly, it's about motivating people towards this destination that might seem scary to them or too ambitious. That's what we do as designers. We have to make people feel uncomfortable. What we're trying to push the first time around has to be beyond where they can think, beyond where they see. Even our customers, they don't know what they don't know. If you ask them what they want, they can't see further out than this first, one solution is right in front of them with the pain point that they're having. It really is about understanding more about their workflow and their desired results. Once you understand that, then you can walk it back based on technical limitations or any other things that might stand in the way, but really put that vision out there. Be able to speak to it, be able to communicate it, get other people excited about it. And then you have to position your team as this critical component of success for the organization. It really is about, my team can do this. We'll take on that pilot project. We'll take on this work. We will show to you that what we're doing is valuable to the organization. And the key to that is, if you work with somebody that is responsible for a project or a whole line of business, if you look at corporate PowerPoints, they're garbage. They suck. So for us, it's about how are we able to influence that? Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what your vision is. Let me help you visualize that. Then you're starting to inject influence. Now it's a shared vision. And then they love it because it looks nicer, of course, but it's got all of your ideas in it. And then when they're in conversations and other people are at the table, you're in alignment with their boss. So it's going to create less friction. Steve Porterville, I don't know how many of you listen to his podcast, Dollars to Donuts. It started up again. He has this quote that he said when he was a guest on somebody else's podcast called "Be a leader, not a leader." It's funny because when I talked to Steve about this, when he saw a tweet with this quote, he's like, "I never made that quote." And I was like, "No, you did. It was at this." He's like, "Oh man, that was good. I usually don't rhyme." But the truth is, leaders don't need somebody to ask for permission or to hold their hand. They don't wait for permission. They just do. And that's the key. It really is about taking the step forward, taking the initiative to put something out there and not be afraid of the consequences. The consequences are never that bad. So, there are many different kinds of leaders. We're going to talk about 4 of them, and you might see some familiar faces. So, the first leader is a motivational leader. Does anybody not know who that is? By a show of hands. Okay, just a few. All right, so that is Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk is an entrepreneur. He started out many years ago. His father had a wine business in New Jersey. He started a YouTube show where he reviewed wine a lot different than anybody else. He would describe the scents as like plum and a punch in the face, and he's a big Jets fan. And since then, he's gone on to create VaynerMedia. And VaynerMedia has become one of the fastest growing advertising agencies in the country. They have offices in New York, in LA, in Chattanooga, in London. I think they're opening up in Singapore. And his brother's a sports agent. They launched Vayner Sports and VaynerX, and like the dude is blowing up. But if people either love him or hate him, because he's all about the hustle, the grind, the 24/7. Like there's a ton of YouTube stuff of him. Like he puts out content every day. But the truth is, like, these types of leaders, like Gary, people want to follow them because of who they are and what they know. They influence people from the outside. They get people inspired by explaining their mission and their vision and their craft, and they focus on leading and influencing people, and they're very results driven. They're trusted and they deliver results for their team, their organization, their customers, and also themselves. These types of leaders, they seek mutual benefit for themselves, others, and their organization. And then somebody like Nelson Mandela, who's very inspirational. These types of leaders are committed to winning, but only as a means to do good and realize the purpose in the world, right? So it's not about them, it's bigger than them. They have this strong ethical framework, and they're able to consistently demonstrate servant leadership, which is key. They also have this potential to be better in the process, and bettering others at the same time, which is key, right? It's this process of achieving their own vision for a better world, which naturally motivates them and others. And truly inspirational leaders, they're followed because of how much they care and who they are on the inside. Malala is a very transformational leader. Their passion and purpose is to transform others. They really want to touch people in all industries across multiple generations, truly like make an impact in the world. And their influence is continuously being transferred through many other people at different times in multiple locations, like across the globe. They have a strong character and a desire to serve and develop others. And we get to Steve Jobs, right? The indomitable leader. They're willing to win at any cost. They're ruthless. They're completely enamored by success and crave everything that comes with it. They often come across as charming, right? Everybody thought they liked Steve Jobs. Those who were closest to him would tell you that he was very abrasive. He was authentic, but their personality and context would change who they are to the people that work with them versus the people that saw them on the outside. These types of leaders, they can excite you or they can crush your soul, just so their expectations are met. And Andrew Lucas Walsh from Facebook says, if you're looking to grow as a leader, don't wait for someone to promote you into that position. Uncover the areas you can lead and just start doing it. Leaders don't have the authority to make people do things. They have to persuade them. The most effective design leaders bring passion into every discussion. And people that they work with every day want to follow them because they're inspired and they want to see better designs emerge. A Effective design leaders pay attention to the business, so they know how to frame these initiatives to get more success for them and their organization. They find hidden champions by identifying who in the organization feels the most pain from the existing solution. You know, there are basically 3 types of people that you can work with as a designer if you're trying to influence people. So there are the people that you work with every day, and those people kind of believe in the purpose. At some point, you will end up getting advocates. And those are people that believe in what design can do, and they've seen some of the success. And then at the end, the highest level you can get are actually ambassadors. And these are people that are speaking for design at the highest level. Like, they're the biggest champions that you have. They really want to see your team grow and succeed. So once you start to become the leader, you have these different opportunities. So it starts out with building your relationship. Once you have built that relationship as a leader, a lot of formal opportunities to lead will start to present themselves, whether it's leading projects or leading people. And then we're going to take a look at 3 important milestones in the career of a leader. And this might help you in an aspirational way, but it might also help you empathize with your boss a little bit. So there are first-time people leaders. Is anybody in the room a first-time people leader? Do you have people reporting to you for the first time in your career? We have one, I like that. So leading people, in this case, we'll call them individual contributors. That's a tough transition to step away from doing the work and letting other people do it. Letting go of the pixels without letting go of the quality of work is really hard. You have to make tough calls all the time, and they may be unpopular with people on your team, people that will your peer until you've taken on this new role, or people in departments who you've worked with closely, who now you've got a little bit of a higher title than them. One of your new key jobs is hiring people and developing talent. It's about growing that team. And like I said before about the calendar, your calendar is going to fill up for the first time, and you really need to prioritize where you need to spend your time, and more importantly, where you don't. And then at some point, your team is going to grow, and you will have managers who manage people reporting to you. So these individual contributors will also be managed by people that you manage. At this point, you really have to be clear with exactly what you will hold them accountable to, because you can't be ambiguous as a leader. You really have to have clear expectations from people, whether you create a framework on how you're going to measure people or measure success or where your value is. You've got to be really open with that. And once you've agreed on these outcomes, you kind of have to let the people that you lead decide on how to get there. It's not your sole responsibility anymore. You can shape what they're working on, but ultimately you have to trust that these people are going to do their job. You've got to give the team freedom to pick their right tools and whatever it takes to get the agreed upon destination. It's about guiding them at this point. It's about coaching them. It's about mentoring them. It's about taking the heat when things go wrong. From my first day in this role that I have, I've been there 7 months, and when I walked in our team, we're pretty behind on delivering things to our different Scrum teams, and it was a new adjustment, lots of reorganizations. And you know, a lot of what they would tell me, well, it's product, they're making changes very late in the game. Or, oh, it's technology, they can't build it even though they said that they could. And I'm like, that's fine. Whatever it is, like, let's erase the slate and just blame me for it. Like, if we're not meeting a deadline, come to me. Don't say, my team is causing this, my team is behind. Like, the first thing you do is take the blame, and the team will start to see that. They're like, hey, you know what, maybe he didn't really have anything to do with this, but, like, he's taking the heat for it. And no matter what decision they make, hey, you know what, you don't like where this is going, tell them that. And tell them that it came from me. Or whatever it takes to continue to move things along, like, that's my job now. My job is to get blamed for everything because design needs to push things forward and make people uncomfortable. So at certain times, it really is about, like, they need somebody to blame, and I'm okay being that fallback person. And then it's about giving feedback, right? But you have to, so when you start to become someone that's leading managers or large teams, what happens is you'll give somebody feedback, and they'll immediately try to, like, please you and do what you said. And you don't want to do that because, you know, sometimes you're just having a conversation and you realize something's not right, but you don't know the actual solution because you're not that close to the work. I don't want to say, hey, you know what, that looks funny there. Can you change that? And then them run and do it. I want to know why they did it. I want to understand the thinking. I just want to challenge their thinking so that I know that they're thinking the right way to solve problems. And then it's really about letting them learn through their own successes and failures, because that's the only way you can build up other leaders. And then finally, you hit this pinnacle, and it's about managing a portfolio of products or an actual organization. And you're thinking strategically. And your job as a senior design leader is to start setting clear long-term directions for your teams. You can't be involved in every single design detail. Actually, you're not involved in most of them. You've got to work with your partners in product and engineering and senior members of your team to make sure that there's alignment and set a clear vision, and then start exerting a wider influence over the entire organization. So as a leader, Amy Jen Sue, she wrote a book called Own the Room, and it's got a lengthy, 15 words after it. She wrote about how you need to have more than one voice as a leader. And the voices that you have may change based on context or situation. So the first voice is the voice of character, and this voice defines who you are and what you believe in. It's your intentions and your motivations. It's based on your personal fundamental principles, and it needs to be consistent and constant to not send mixed messages to your team. And then there's this voice of context. It's the voice you use when you need to communicate to a particular audience. It's about taking the time to set the stage and not dive into the details right away. I don't know if you've noticed in the US, the way we kind of communicate, because I've worked with global teams now, it's always, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you what I told you I was going to tell you. And then I'm going to reiterate what I had just told you that I was going to tell you originally. And, that is a way of using that voice of context. In certain situations, you need that. In certain situations, you're in a room and everybody's on their laptop and they only perk up when they hear something. You need to understand the audience. And this voice of context is used for clarity when you're presenting to executives or just kicking off with a meeting with your team to give them a bigger picture. It's the best voice to use when you're explaining rationale for design decisions or decision-making criteria. Then there's that voice of clarity, and this is what helps your team stay focused on their highest priorities, because every day they're going to come to you and say, somebody told me to do this, or product wants me to do this, or technology needs me to drop everything and work on something. And we know as designers, that's a common occurrence. But you need someone to avoid constantly changing direction as a result of just some sort of instant reaction to something. My team has this all the time, and it's something that I need to reassess their priorities on. So helping them reprioritize what they're supposed to work on, and helping them feel empowered to say no from time to time. Saying no is a powerful thing. It's also okay. Then you've got a voice of curiosity, and as a leader, you give direction, you share information, you make important decisions. But like I said before, you can't be that end-all, fix-all problem solver. You've got to ask questions instead of providing feedback. You've got to help others grow. You've got to help them think through problems. You have to resolve conflicts. As designers, it's all about curiosity, right? We always observe with intent. We want to understand more. There's never enough. We can always ask another question. We can always get to another level of detail. And we need to do that to be successful. And then the voice of connection is really what helps you build rapport with the people that you work with and strengthen the relationships you have with them. It's about getting to know them as humans, not just coworkers, because these are the people that you spend most of your time with. It's about knowing what they do on the weekend, even if you really don't care. It's you will learn to care. You can fake it for a little while, but as you start to have conversations with people, you realize you have a good connection with them. And this is really what helps you with that storytelling voice that enables you to create allies and ambassadors that you can rely on to help evangelize what you and your team does. So the truth is, you're always designing, right? So whether it's strategy for a project, the way your team does design reviews and critiques, designing the team offsite that your team will use, or this career development path for them, or redesigning the whole organization and how the organization is laid out. The designing never stops. We're always evolving. We're always designers. But the truth is, being a leader isn't easy. It requires a lot of work. There are certain traps and pitfalls that you can fall into. The First one, as I mentioned before, is letting go. You know, the transition is hard for many designers because leaving design means less designing all the day-to-day products, of course. This doesn't mean that you're no longer a designer. It just means someone else will be implementing it. Someone else will be starting those ideas, and you will help shape them. Your new position is an opportunity to provide vision and guidance. But we also have this responsibility of setting the standards for professionalism and work performance. Ego is something we talked about earlier. When you become a leader, don't let that influence go to your head. Many leaders think that because they're great designers, that they can then be an asshole to the designers that work for them. It just doesn't work that way. It's about collaborating, not commanding. It's about influencing, not instructing. It's about embracing flexibility, not rigidity. And it's about gaining visibility, not control. Ask how you can help rather than standing over their shoulder. It's about defending them, not demanding things from them or trying to be the hero by taking on too much work that they can handle. You don't want your team to feel overwhelmed or stressed. You don't want yourself to feel overwhelmed or stressed. There's no solution for that, right? It's truly about saying no. Everybody at some point is going to feel that stress. And then there's imposter syndrome, and that shit is real, right? You're in meetings with all these higher ups, and in their eyes, you're still the designer. I remember my last job. I walked in on my first day and I was in this executive meeting and it was like they were patting me on the head, like, okay, designer, like, can you make our PowerPoints pretty? Like, we really don't care what you have to say. We'll listen to you, but it's whatever. You're just a designer. Like, we've got the MBAs, we've got the PhDs, like, we know everything. You're gonna execute on it. But don't let that discourage you. You'll find opportunities to really show your value and influence them. How many of you thought about at some point, or you might be doing it already, you really want to think about speaking or blogging or writing, but every time you start, you're like, you know, I think someone else has said this. I've read this somewhere. I don't want to sound like I'm saying the same thing that they did. You know, that's fair, but it's also bullshit, right? Because people may have said something similar, or they may have gone through a similar experience, but it's not your experience, it's not your words, it's not your take. So you have your own voice, your own words, your own style that's tied to a specific experience you had. Talk about it, share it. It's really, as a design industry, it helps other people. And then sometimes being away from the work makes you feel more uncomfortable critiquing it because maybe you feel like I've stepped so far away from this work, I can't jump into Illustrator and bang this out anymore. It's important to try to understand where the industry is going with tools, but at the end of the day, you still have that experience to critique what good design is or what's not good design. You just maybe can't jump in and use the tools as quick since they've evolved from the last time you used them. And it's about being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Like, this is key. This is our lives as designers. And as a leader, it's even harder. Conversations around performance, salary, expectations, reviews. Anytime HR comes in, like, that's not fun. Budget, priorities. These are all very real conversations, and they're never easy to have. But if you're honest and direct and not tell different things to different people, then it makes it a little bit easier. So it doesn't really matter if you have 2 years or 20 years of experience. You can actually be a leader. You can step up and do this. Is anybody in this room an emerging designer? So emerging designer is technically the PC term for new or junior designers, right? So still in school, fresh out of school, maybe a few years in. Okay, perfect. This is actually this is gonna sound like bullshit, but I swear, you are my favorite people, right? Because you are the future of our industry. This bright-eyed, fresh perspective is infectious. Whenever we have interns come into my organization, like, that's my favorite time. I mean, they turn me on to new music, new books, new everything. Besides that, they've got this passion. They haven't been beat down yet by corporations telling them no for years. That passion is contagious. I love that. And you bring this energy to the team that the team kind of it's peaks and valleys, right? So I feel like the team does well, and then all of a sudden they hit a loss, or they don't grow as fast as they would, or a project didn't do so well and they're a little bit down, then someone else comes in with a new perspective, and maybe that's the right time to try this again. So I really like that. That curiosity and willingness to use design for good, which is really important, helps us continue to learn in new ways. Now we've got mid to senior level. I'm not going to get to show hands for everything, but when you're in this position, it's about driving the craft of the work to be a leader. Let the work do the talking. Make sure that you're being noticed for your work contributions and efforts, because that's what's going to help you get to the next level. At this point, you should be facilitating conversations that lead to solutions that your team can actually execute on. And prove that you're the expert and that you can speak the design, you can speak to all of the work that's happening accurately and convincingly. And then you've got to make upper management, your stakeholders, you've got to make them feel uncomfortable. You're the people that are driving a lot of the organizational change. It's about mentoring and educating those younger designers at this point. Then at some point you become leadership, right? This truly is like, is it the pinnacle? Like, I'll tell you, everybody wants that seat at the table, and when you get it, you're like, oh man, is this what it was all about? It's like, it's constant beatdowns. No, but in every organization, right, there's different challenges, and you always face them. And when you're in leadership, it's truly about inspiring that team to do the best work. It's about help spreading the message of what your team's doing through others. It's about being an ambassador to your cross-functional partners, but also being an ally to them. It's about taking their decisions that they have to make and letting your team know why those decisions were made. You're amplifying the value of design at this point. You're proactively sharing your success stories. You're delivering value to the organization at many different levels. And you're understanding the organization inside and out and the ecosystem, which is everything that people will touch that's related to your organization. And then it's truly about getting out of the way, right? It's about letting your team go off and do what they do, letting other leaders emerge, letting others thrive, letting makers make. If people want to make shit, let them make shit. Like, don't get in their way. So I'm going to tell you a funny story, maybe not funny story, it's kind of a sad story about my first job. When I first started in design, literally my first actual job, not like I worked somewhere while I was still in school. I worked for an electronics retailer, kind of like a Best Buy. I'm not going to go away their name, but we had a leader. His name was Dick. I don't remember his last name. I won't say it anyway. That actually fit him, right? I was on the team we used to work on. These are, I don't know, a lot of people might not know this. These are newspaper circulars, right? This is actually some of the stuff being printed. So if you kind of look at it without giving it away, it's like 200 little squares on a page of different sales and deals that they were going to have. And the way it worked is we'd have a couple of logos of like the company, maybe it's a VCR at the time, maybe it's Sony, maybe it's Toshiba, price taking up like 3/4 of the screen, big image and a couple of bullet points. So I remember we'd work on getting the circulars out on Friday, was our deadline to get them to the press. And Dick would come in and he would be like, I just threw Sony out of here. He's like, take Sony out of all the ads, which could be like 100 little squares in like the next hour. And he would stand over my shoulder and I still smell his like coffee at like 5 o'clock, like cigarettes, like it makes me, I'm throwing up in my mouth a little bit. He would come in and he'd be like, change that. And I'm like, all right, we'll get it done in like 15 minutes. He's sitting over my shoulder. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you not a designer? Like, you suck. And I'm like, this is really not comfortable. So I'd of course not say anything. I'd work through it. I'd hear him slowly go to the next person. What is wrong with you? Are you not a designer? Like, he'd go to everyone on that team. Like, this is terrible. Like, he didn't once offer to make this tense situation better. He didn't like provide any actual guidance. All he did was get in the way and make things worse. You know, the truth is, once I graduated, I took the first job I could to get away from this guy. Like, that was terrible. Like, seriously, I still smell him, which is weird. So, you know, it's funny. You may know Zach Naylor. He spoke at UXP in Cleveland last year. He's got a podcast called the Aurelius Podcast. And one of the things he used to say when he would close the show is if you had temporary amnesia and couldn't remember anything that we had talked about, and I wanted you to remember something from this session, it really would be like use actions over words, lead by example, have good intentions, become comfortable in uncomfortable situations, collaborate, be inclusive, embrace embrace diverse perspectives. I'll leave that up there for a second, because I saw a phone come out. And most importantly, oh wait, I saw another phone come out. The most important thing, don't be a dick. That's it. We have some time for questions, although I'm not worried about it. But I'm here to help, so.
First of all, thank you for the